people are looking at learning on demand. How can we trigger context and trigger content in different spaces in different parts of the world? My name is Sylvester Arnab, and I'm a professor in game science. And my work is into the investigation of the use of games, gamification, and serious games in teaching and learning, as well as in other sectors. Serious Game Society is a society that is set up based on the work that we have done within the Games and Learning Alliance network, funded by the Framework 7 of the EU Commission funding, which ended in 2014. And the Serious Game Society is looking at different works which are being done by the partners in that particular network and extend their remit in terms of creating conferences and journal publications. And anyone who is interested in serious games in general can actually be part of the society. And we have conference organized every year that is looking at different topics with regards to serious games and gamification. And Beaconing is a project which is funded by the Horizon 2020 EU Commission funding, and it is being led by ourselves at Coventry University, and there are 15 partners in the project. And the project is looking at expanding the experience of learning from a classroom setting into the outdoor and into personal spaces by looking at pervasive technology as well as gamification. So what we've done so far is we have developed authoring tool for teachers to be able to create their own gamified lesson path, meaning that they can create a lesson and they can populate it with different gamification or serious games activities in terms of mini games, and they can also create activities using the location-based technology. And this is quite interesting because the schools that we are going to work with are going to create their own lesson path or lesson plans and deliver it to the students in their own classroom, and that will allow us to evaluate it and perhaps provide the final version of it soon. And it is an interesting project because this is an innovative approach in combining pervasive gamification with deconstructing learning in smaller chunks by using mini games and providing an authoring tool that will allow non-programmers, for example, teachers who can create their own interesting content. The Disruptive Media Learning LAB is a unit that has been set up by the university for us to work with staff and students, that will include lecturers and teachers, to discover new ways for teaching and learning in terms of the design of teaching, the delivery of teaching, and the engagement of learning, and how students can be involved as part of the co-creative process in delivering different types of resources and toolkits for teaching and learning. So we are looking at flipped learning, beyond flipped, we called it, because we are looking at how to encourage active learning and how to encourage the design of new courses that is looking at active learning specifically, as well as the use of gameful and playful processes that will allow us to create engaging activities, and also the use of open web in terms of encouraging digital sort of platform in terms of the use of this platform in not only teaching and learning, but also assessment of learning as well. So the lab has been set up because of the disruptions that has been happening in different industries in terms of how can we be more agile in addressing and responding to new challenges. So in terms of teaching and learning, we need to be prepared with what is happening in the market, what is happening in the world, and what are the challenges that are going to change the way we interact with our students, because knowledge and resources are everywhere digitally. And we need to provide an experience for our students that will be wholesome, and an experience that will make them better citizens, an experience that will make them better learners, lifelong learners, and will make them be able to perform in the world of works effectively as well. So that is one of the premises of why the lab's been set up, and some of the people at the university are inducted into the unit to provide different expertise in games and gamification, open media, open web, open educational resources, and the use of playful methodologies in developing new resources. And the lesson learned, there are a lot of lessons learned, because when we first started the lab, it was quite difficult, especially working with staff who are already comfortable in the way they deliver teaching. So it was quite interesting to really onboard and help them to discover new ways they might be able to improve the way they do, or might be able to add new things to what they do as well. So the lessons learned is the onboarding and the discovery part of engaging with staff at the university is very important. You need to create something simple, create demonstrations, create workshops that will be able to onboard them in order to change the mindset, because you need to change the mindset first before you can practice. And once you have practiced it, you can master that particular approach in terms of being disruptive and being innovative in the way that you deliver your teaching and design your teaching. And we have also learned that we need to be very bottom-up and holistic in the way that we design teaching and learning. Because when we first started, most people that we were engaging with were very much influenced and driven by technology, driven by new shiny things. And we're saying that we should not be driven by them, we should be inspired by them. However, everything that we do should be driven by the needs. What are the actual gaps and needs in teaching and learning that would help us to actually define what types of technology that will be able to support that particular learning. So we have gone through that particular process, and I believe that that's been one of our key lessons learned, because staff are able to evaluate the needs of their own course and come back to us and come up with ideas in terms of draft ideas of what they want to do, and then we can help to inform them in terms of what types of technology that can help, and what types of methods that can help them to turn it into a reality. Hybrid learning spaces are spaces that can be populated with different resources. For example, you can use digital resources in different methods, in different media, games, or any open medias out there, as well as the use of physical spaces as a creative space for these resources to be engaged with. And when I look at hybrid learning, I would like to say that hybrid learning is about being strategic and being able to conceptualize and contextualize the use of different resources in different ways. Meaning that every single resource that we are going to use in that particular teaching would have to be meaningful, and we have to have a purpose, and the context will have to be clear. That's why we are using a lot of storyboarding to allow people to understand the needs, as well as how to populate that particular lesson with different types of resources in order to create a hybrid learning space. We are also looking at it in terms of the use of technology to support hybrid learning spaces. For example, pervasive technology, augmented reality type thing. But these technologies, the use of these technologies are informed by the needs. So what we are trying to do is to provide different examples and different possibilities that staff can actually engage with that would hopefully inspire them. One of the stories that we have is we engage with the MIT in the USA in terms of using augmented reality platforms, because they have their own platform that's created for teachers to create different activities. So I brought that back to the university in terms of trying to engage with different stuff in terms of what are the different needs that we have at the university that would require a hybrid approach. So we started with the hybrid approach rather than the technology. So we work with two staffs who are based at the languages center. So they said, oh, one thing that we want to do is how can we combine the teaching of learning, the teaching of language in the city center. For example, you can learn about history, you can learn about the language at the same time. So we ended up creating some programs that would teach Italian in Coventry and using Coventry as representative of Italy type thing. So we say, okay, now that we have the concept, what we want to do, okay, let's see what can help us to develop this. So we said that, okay, let's try this tool and see how we can do it. So we have two students working with these two lecturers. So they created a game, a location-based game that will allow students to go around Coventry and learn Italian at the same time. So that is one example of how lecturers can come and work with us, for us to really identify the different needs, identify the different, not just needs, but opportunities in terms of the way learning can be facilitated. One example that we have just mentioned is hybrid learning is one opportunity that we push at university, so that encourage staff to actually work with us. And there are also other examples where staff will come to us and they come up with different ideas that they want to possibly address, and we encourage co-creativity with ourselves as well as with the different staff to try and discover how can we support those needs and inform what types of technology and what types of approaches that will be suitable. In higher education, based on my experience, there are two different ways. One approach is the use of games in the actual module or the actual course. So the game can be used as part of the reflection, a part of discussion. Before, everyone is talking about using games and then using it solely for assessment, where people can actually go through the game, then you can assess their progress, their knowledge, and whatnot. However, the trend now is actually looking at the use of games as part of the mini learning, or we call it atomic learning. So there are smaller learning objectives with smaller learning resources. So games can use in that manner. So meaning that this is an approach in hybrid learning, where you identify the needs and the different content that you want to deliver, and you identify what resources that would fit what types of content that you want to deliver. So for example, the game can deliver this particular concept that will allow students to reflect as well as discuss as a group, so that will allow better learning, deeper discussion, which is quite difficult to get from standalone gaming. Of course, one of the design of games which is more pervasive, that is one of the key trends at the moment. So everyone is trying to create sort of location-based learning, trying to encourage learning within an outdoor setting. And it has been used in schools as well, where they use a gamification approach in getting students to go outdoor and discover different artifacts and come back into the classroom as a mission room where they will discuss their findings. So that's one of the key method that people has used. And the second approach that I said before is the design of games as a learning process. That's one of the key trends as well, which is used by ourselves at Coventry University, which is used at the Institute of Play, as well, encouraging teachers and students to create their own games. And the key value in creating games as part of the learning process is you will go through the different learning that is required. For example, the understanding of a topic, the reflection of the topic, the application of the topic that will make the learning more wholesome. And in a game design process, you will be able to think about the audience. So you'll be more, you will learn about empathy. How do you empathize with your audience who are going to interact with your games? So when you will learn about your audience, you learn about the topic, you apply them, you will test them, and you will reflect. So that is one of the key trends at the moment, and one thing that we are pushing at the university and beyond, and it has been adopted and adapted in different other organizations as well. The next topic for me is actually looking at Internet of Things, because the world is getting more connected and the infrastructures are getting smarter, a lot of sensors that's been produced. And this is actually based on the needs of how students, the way they learn is changing. So people are looking at learning on demand. How can we trigger context and trigger content in different spaces, in different parts of the world? How can we encourage people to be lifelong learners? So that is the needs that I want to look at. So by looking at Internet of Things in terms of the connection of different spaces that will combine both digital and physical, how can we encourage people to learn anywhere and at any time? So that's one thing that I'm looking at, and that is in line with the foundation that we've looked at within the Beacon project, as well as the stuff we are doing at the Disruptive Media Learning LAB. So in terms of the Internet of Things and the use of artificial intelligence in possibly helping us to trigger context-aware informations, as well as content, that's one of the things that I'm actually interested in, all these opportunities for pervasive learning and how anywhere, anytime learning can be supported. For me, I think this is quite idealistic. Is how can we share content and share modules and courses across the university in Europe? Is there any opportunity for learning on demand? Is there an opportunity for the Uberification of learning? Is there an opportunity for, say, a student would want to be an engineer in this sort of subject, and based on the best practices and best case studies from different universities, how can we create this course that will include different universities, and it would be joint degree? We do something which is called hotel, where we can have, say, for example, a PhD that is supervised by 2 different universities, and the degree will be presented by both universities. But we have not something that is, how do you call it, strong in terms of having a joint degree from different universities, more than 2 universities. So I think for me, in terms of the future of the universities in Europe, is how can universities come together and become one strong universal university. I think this is quite far-fetched, but there are a lot of different works which are being looked at the moment. For example, learning on demand. How can we use the Amazon approach? The Amazon, you can actually, look at different resources and information, and when you can combine them, you can create your own program. How can we create something like this that you can say, okay, I want something from this university, this university, this university, this university. Okay, that is the degree that I want to have that would make me a better person. So that would give autonomy to the learners. That will make them better learners because they have the option and they have the power in selecting content that they will need for the learning.